and welcome. You're tuning in to Unbreakable Hope with me, your host, Jessica Rose. This podcast is all about seeking the light. In each episode, we chat with someone who has either overcome the darkness or who is actively spreading light within their own community. So let's jump into today's episode. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Alissa. Alissa has been a first responder. She is a soon-to-be mother, and she's gone through some pretty wild stuff in her young years. So join me as we dive in and have a conversation about being a first responder, how we can better change our communities, and how we can make a difference, not just for first responders, but for everyone and generations to come. Well, thank you so much for being here. This is super exciting. This is the second ever in person that I've ever done recording. So thank you.
Of course. Happy to be here.
I'm really excited because I feel like you have a lot of life experience already in your young years and a lot that you could share, not only what you've been through, but things that you have done in your life and just a lot of valuable experience in all that you do.
Yeah. All the things. I feel like I've lived 17 lifetimes already and I'm 27. So, especially in the last year. I feel like the last year has been insane. So, yeah.
Yes. From the little bit that I actually know what's going on in the last year, I agree. I tell people all the time, like, oh, if I died tomorrow, like I've lived a long life. I've done a lot and I'm almost 36. And it's like, holy smokes. When I was 25, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I've done so much in my life.
It's like, what's to come? A scary thought.
Well, you do have one thing to come. Oh.
Yes. A little girl in March. That's been the big thing this year. We did not think that this would be my life. If you would ask me, my parents, my friends, I would be the single, wild, crazy aunt forever. And I would never find a man, let alone have a child. And here we are. So crazy how fast things change.
Life just does change. I feel the same thing. I was joking with a friend yesterday. You know, I've said some stuff in the past that I still stand by, but here I am. I'm married. My husband's in a wheelchair. He can't talk. I'm a talkaholic.
He's talking so much though.
He's got a few words in him. Mm-hmm. He says why a lot.
A lot.
So I have a lot of friends out there that will just text me like why. Mm-hmm. Or when we're in person, like
of all the words.
They'll stress the why. And I remember the first time my mom did it, and I looked at her.
Like it was funny the first time, but now that it's on the 1,000th time, I'm over it.
And usually I'll catch it, like as soon as someone says why, even if in context, right? I'm like, cringe. Oh man.
Any other word?
Yeah. But it's definitely, life is a roller coaster, that's for sure. We go through so many experiences that we don't expect, and we come out through them. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast for years, was being able to share. Look, we all go through crazy things in life and we come out them. So I'd love to give you a moment if you want to tell our audience a little bit more about yourself, and we can dive into some more craziness that has gone on in your life.
Deal. So I'm Alissa. I am friends with, or my mom is friends with her, and then we've kind of adopted each other since then. I'm a first responder, worked on the ambulances for about 4 years now, done firefighting. Now I'm a medical assistant in a clinic because baby. But yeah, this last year, we got pregnant in May of last year, ended up having an ectopic pregnancy. It ruptured. My blood pressure dropped to 54/29, which is incredibly low. They called like a rapid response on me and had to have like blood transfusion and all kinds of craziness. And then literally 6 weeks after my recovery from surgery, we found out I was pregnant again. And here we are. Flash forward to November, me and Sam, my now husband, are in Fort Worth celebrating my birthday, and we get a call at 2 a.m. that our house was destroyed in a tornado. So then we've lived with my mom and dad for the last couple months, and we just got moved into our new house like 2 weeks ago. I feel like I'm forgetting so many things. Like that's just the big objects this year was like hospital, baby, tornado. But that's enough for a lifetime. So, but yeah, I'm I have been doing first responding, mostly on the ambulances, and that's kind of what piqued our interest because of Andrew. I've gotten to like help her a lot and give her some resources and stuff like that, and probably became all close and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that piece alone people don't understand or maybe they take for granted. That's been a wild ride of this is what all are our needs. And okay, I go out of town for work or for whatever. Maybe I just need respite and I need a trip out of town. Who's going to give my husband his medication? Because I pay for a care company and I have licensed CNAs, but they're not allowed to administer medication.
Mm-hmm.
And when my husband had a feeding tube, then it's, oh, well, now that's a whole
whole
nother
different world.
conversation.
Yeah.
So we were on home health and I said, hey, I'm going out of town. Can you guys do this? And they said, no. So one barrier they said, oh, we can only come once a day for insurance. Like, okay, I'll private pay. We're like, well, we're not set up for that capacity because that's not something we normally do. Okay, well, then what do I do? So you were definitely instrumental in really helping me gather resources, gathering support people. When my husband was bedridden and everything to do anything with him took two people.
Yeah.
Yes. And your dad even coming over a couple times, being a champ, trying to help me get him up. It just wild. It's been a wild ride and really eye-opening for me as a caregiver is, wow, there's so many resources and needs that people have that there's not a service for that. You can't, it's not like I can't pay for it. I've looked, I've asked, and every time I bring this up with people, just like a hospital bed, that's one of my favorite things. Oh, you should be in a hospital bed. I'm like, okay, well, where do I sleep?
Yeah, what about me? Do I sleep on the floor?
Yeah. This is still my husband. I'm in my 30s. Like, come on. Like,
I want to sleep next to my husband every night. Yeah. I
like,
100% get it.
Yeah. Oh, just put him in the living room. It was like, oh, okay, just leave him exposed to like, it just didn't make sense to me. So, I'm forever grateful for all of your love and support over the years. And even just simple things like calling, like, okay, what hospital are you going to? You know, what's the process? This and that. I think that's been extremely helpful for me. So maybe we can start there with what are some maybe base level tips that you can offer people from your time being in an ambulance and the different roles that you played in there that maybe people who are listening can help if they've ever had a call for themselves or somebody else?
So most of the time, err on the side of caution. Like if you think maybe I need help, or maybe, if I'm having chest pain, we'll say, for example, it's like, is this indigestion? Is this heartburn? Maybe, but what if it's not? And then in 20 seconds, you lose consciousness. Like, it's better to err on the side of caution than otherwise. Another thing is calling. You don't have to be transported. You can always change your mind. They take your vitals, they assess you, and they're like, hey, I think you're fine. It's kind of up to you to decide if you get taken to the hospital. So you can always just call and just get that reassurance of like, hey, you're probably fine, or like, hey, no, I think you should go to the hospital. Always err on the side of caution in that aspect. Most of the time, most of the people we run are fine. Most of the people we run just don't need anything. But there are those people that are like, hey, if you didn't call, you'd probably be dead by now. And it's so great that you called. That and hospitals are so overworked right now, so it's kind of, if you think you have the flu, you don't need an ambulance. So stuff like that is, the difference between urgent care versus emergency room, understanding that, being educated in that. If you're coughing, sore throat, you don't need an emergency room. You should go to an urgent care for your primary care. So that's the two big things is, when in doubt, I'm not one to say like Google, but there are so many like charts and stuff that I've seen on Facebook even of like, hey, if this happened, you should go to an urgent care. If this happened, you should go to the ER. Like if you got stung by a bee, I think that was one of the examples, was like maybe an urgent care, but if you stepped into a beehive or something like that, I think that was the other thing, was like, you should probably go to an emergency room. Yeah. So just differentiating between those two.
That I think is a vital just societal tip. So I never heard of urgent cares.
Really?
I grew up, both my parents were Air Force. I had Tricare my entire life because then I joined the Marine Corps. Yeah. And if something was wrong, I went to sick call and I was seen, you know,
because you don't. There's not the emergency.
Yeah, so there wasn't really this, like, if it was an ER, like, you go to the,
it's like a whole different like community that you have. Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
I could see that.
So I got out of the Marine Corps, and I still had TRICARE. So I got out after 4.5 years. Got out medically. My TRICARE was extended, and I eventually discovered that I had tonsil stones. So,
okay.
But anytime I saw white specks, I was like, I don't feel sick, but I go and I get them checked, and the doctor was like, no, not strep. And I'm like, okay. Well, this time I was like, I think this is strep. I never had it my entire life, but I was like, no, I really, shoot, I think this is it. Yep. And I can trace it back to exactly where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
I had somebody who was trying to convince me that this coffee didn't taste like coffee. It was like, no, try it. And I was like, no. And then and then boom. Well, I called my primary care, and they said, oh, we can get you in 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
By then. Yeah.
And I was sure there is that like kind of contagious.
Yeah.
They didn't even tell me about urgent care.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
The only other thing I knew, I was like, I guess I'm going to go to the ER. Yeah. No one I talked to when I mentioned it to told me about an urgent care. So I go to the ER and I'm like, hey, like, this isn't like really emergency, but I'm pretty sure I have strep throat. My doctor's office can't get me in. And the lady was really sweet, checked me, and she said, no big deal. But then they asked me about urgent care, and I said, what's that? And they said, oh, sweetie, you don't know what an urgent care is? No, I had no clue.
And they taught you.
No clue. Yeah. So that, I think, is so wonderful. And I don't know how many other people were in my shoes that had never heard of an urgent care before. But yeah, I think that's great. You can't get in to see your primary care doctor. You don't really need to go to the emergency room, but it's something to be addressed. There's urgent cares like everywhere.
And the thing with emergency rooms is, so I worked in an ER for probably about a year, and we have like what's called a triage. So if you were, say, this exact scenario, you go to the ER because you don't know about an urgent care and your primary care can't get you in, you're contagious, you just need an antibiotic or something small like that. They have a triage in the front that usually has a physician and then a whole bunch of nursing staff, techs, that'll get you in, assess your vital signs, they'll do the strep test on you, and then they'll discharge you from triage. You don't necessarily have to be in the ER and take up a bed that someone that was super sick needed. So that's something that people utilize and also take advantage on the other hand is they're like, oh, well, I'll just go to ER because they'll get me in and out. They use it as an urgent care, whether that's because they're not educated or something else. There's also the struggle with finances because an ER visit usually don't have to pay anything that day, so they just get a free visit essentially. Versus if you go to an urgent care, you have a copay and all this stuff. So,
yeah, that's a good point too. My brother, he was a nurse for 10 years, I want to say, and then he's actually, I think in his last year, becoming an anesthesiologist.
Oh, cool.
So I remember some of the stories that he shared with me working in the ER. And I do think that there are services that are misused or maybe wrongly used. And like you said, is it just not educated to know that there's another option? Is it a financial situation? Or is it willfully, knowingly misusing a service or a system? Yeah. And I think that that also comes with something that we talked about too, was as a first responder in the lift assistance.
Yes.
So I would love to get your feedback on your experience.
Yes. Okay. So the service that I worked for mostly on the ambulances, we had fire respond to 100% of our calls with us, except if it was a in-hospital transfer, like hospital, we didn't have fire respond. But every single 911 call we responded to. However, fire got all the lift assists. So at 2 in the morning when Mima fell, she'll just call and the fire department will come pick her up and put her back in her bed and go about their day. So I don't have a ton of experience with lift assists, but the other service that I worked for, I wasn't there very long. I was there for like 9 months. We did the lift assists, unless it was like a large bariatric patient, whatever. I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound kind of mean, but they're exhausting. Just because so many people need them. So we're getting called to it. And it's one of the reasons I got into the emergency medicine scene was because I love the adrenaline rush. I love, it sounds really messed up, but I love the feeling of like doing chest compressions on someone. I love all the, oh, you cut your aorta and you're bleeding out and I'm having to hold, I love that. That's like the adrenaline rush is what got me in and that's what keeps me in. So whenever you're going to lift up Mima who slipped and fell and just needs help up, whenever there's like a shooting that gets dispatched at the same time, it's like, come on, like I don't want to help you. I want to go do this cool stuff. And so whenever there's like a common theme with some people, we call them like black clouds, where they get all the cool stuff. They're running all the shootings, all the stabbings, all the whatevers. And then there are people like me who went through like a year as a white cloud where we're running all the lift assists and all the, oh, I coughed, so I think I have the flu and I want to go to the ER, stuff like that. And so for that, it's really kind of exhausting, and not because, that person has a need. They need help up. They don't have any other resources. They don't have, their grandson lives in California, they can't come help them. So we're kind of the only people that can help. And so that's a really important thing. And that's really awesome that we're able to be that. But we kind of get lose track of that. It gets so focused on, oh, I want to do this cool stuff, that it just feels so pointless and dumb, essentially.
I can say, because everybody gets attracted to whatever career path for different reasons. So I joke, but God blessed me with a strong stomach. And when my husband's brain cancer came back, I realized why I was blessed with a strong stomach. Your mom does not have that.
Because you see some stuff. Yes, no, she does not. No, yes, she does not.
I remember when I asked about the peg tube, and I said, well, what do other people do when they go out of town? And he said, well, normally they just have friends or family do it. My closest family is an hour away, and my closest friend, she can't even look at it, much less put anything in it. Like, what? So I think of that too when it comes to the lift assist is, it's not like people don't become a firefighter because they want to help pick people up off the ground.
Exactly.
It just somehow has kind of fallen into there, because then same thing like we said earlier, where is the service for that? Where is the gap for that?
I truly believe that there needs to be like simply like a lift assist, or there's like lift assist and then there's public assist. So if like you, for example, actually there's a Facebook group, the like Norman community page, and this elderly person posted that they needed help changing the batteries in their smoke detector. And they called the fire department, and the fire department was like, hey, sorry, we can't do that. That's like a liability for us if we break something, whatever. But she was like, I can't get up on a ladder. I'm 94 years old, and so it's like, I feel like there needs to be some kind of middle ground for lift assist, public assist, if you're elderly and you need help bringing your groceries in, like something like that, if you don't have family close by or friends close by, or if your neighbors aren't nice and you don't have a communication with them, it's like there needs to be some sort of service to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a lot of gaps, and I hear that a lot from my caregivers that I pay for through a company, and some of the things that they have said clients have asked them to do, and they're like, well, we can't do that either. I thought, well, then who helps them?
Whose job is that?
Yeah, like where is the middle ground? Because with my husband's condition is, I've actually called facilities, and no facility can treat him in a humane manner because he has a cognitive and physical impairment. And that's where I kind of made a joke, which definitely got taken clearly the wrong way. But I jokingly said the last time I had to use a lift assist was cognitively, my husband woke up and Lord bless him, he actually had the sensation he had to go to the bathroom, which I never had. Right? Yeah. So this is like really great.
He usually just goes, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. He's been incontinent for a couple of years. So as his brain's trying to wake back up and recover, he got this feeling like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. And he also was like, oh, and here's kind of my version of the story. Sees me sleeping and thinks like, I got this. Well, his brain kind of forgot that half of his body doesn't work. So he gets up to go to the bathroom, and lo and behold, he realizes, oh, my leg doesn't work. And so by the time I realize he's awake, he's already like sliding off, but he's like this panic, like trying to hold onto the bed and like confused, like doesn't understand what's going on. I'm like, oh yeah, that arm doesn't work, that leg doesn't work. and the position he was in, I couldn't grip him and squat him and pull him up because he was too much out of position. So I just had to basically
and you're little and he's not. So yeah.
Yeah. I am. I'm about 110 and he's about 150. So he's definitely got me weight wise. It took me a lot to get in a position I have my own disabilities too, to get in a position where I could even get him in and out of bed on my own. I heavily relied on friends and caregivers and neighbor support for transfers. Mm-hmm. But with that, I was like, I can't. And I tried so hard. Like, I can't. I'm going to have to call. Like, I have to have help.
Yeah.
And the one thing too is like with neighbors, I know a lot of my neighbors. A lot of them, they don't really have it in them either. But I also have to consider the safety for Andrew because he has history of injury to his shoulder. So then if it's any old person trying to pick him up, then we have to be careful. Or are we causing more injury to him as well? So I've been really grateful for it. But a good point is there a middle ground? Is there a middle ground that we could establish within our own communities? Is that something that we need funding for? And do we have to look into how many people are calling in a legitimate situation where it's like on the ground fell, not just, hey, I'd love to go to my couch. Can you help get me to my couch? Yeah. Like,
I feel like there could be a service that did stuff like that. And maybe, I don't know the semantics of it, but if it was something like that, like kind of a want, if they could charge for that versus their insurance or the city pays for it if it's like a need. But
that's another good point. It's one of those things. I've been grateful for all the love and support I've gotten over these years, but happy to pay for it.
Yeah.
For the people who were stepping in and helping out and saying, hey, I can help give medication while you're gone. I can help check on them, those kind of things. I'm happy to pay people to support me. I don't ever expect anything for free. So that's another good point too, is like, could there be a service that there is a charge for it? I know in some states they do.
For sure think that needs to happen. I don't know who needs to make that happen or any of the details behind it, but I firmly believe that someone do it. Someone please do it. Yes.
Because that's true. That definitely helps. That helps the community still with a lot of the community needs, but also helps. And maybe that's something too, is alleviate some of the burden that is on a lot of the first responders.
Yeah.
And are we over in excess all the time? Or do we have a lot of people on staff just because we have these community calls?
Yeah. And I will say it's a little bit of both. Whenever I work in Norman, we have 9 fire stations. And so there are we have 2 stations that are way out east that cover like Lake Thunderbird, and they're getting called out to lift assists all the time. It's these elderly couples that kind of the whole situation, they got up to pee in the middle of the night and they slipped and they fell, just need help back up. Their husband isn't capable of lifting them or doing anything really. And so they're having to get up at, 3:00 in the morning and do all this stuff. And it becomes a point of whenever you're already running, 20 emergency calls, because we work 24-hour shifts. So if you're already running 20 calls in that 24 hours, you're up the entire 24 hours. And so at 3:00 in the morning, when Meemaw goes up to get a drink of water, it's like, come on, stay in bed. But it doesn't always work like that. And so it gets to a point of exhausting and where you're just over it. And then that fuels into the burnout, and then that affects your mental health. And then that just slowly gets to a point where you're just over it. So
I've heard from a lot of other people that have worked for ambulance agencies about some of the different lack of supports or burnout. What are some of the things that you would say is probably pretty common, or something that you personally experienced that might be, I want, like my mom wants to say, might be an easy change. Nothing's really easy.
No.
But something that could be resolved, could be changed by rules or leadership or systems.
So with first responding, so police and fire, I feel like are pretty fairly compensated. They 100% should and could be paid more. However, EMS is kind of the black sheep of the family. So I have been at the company that I work for. I have been there for going on 4 years. First EMS job, have been there. I make $13.70 something cents an hour. Just let that number
like,
sink in. $13 an hour.
Okay. Wow.
So as, I'm almost 30, I'm about to have a kid. I can't live off that. So the last 4 years, I've had to work 80 plus hours a week just to comfortably live. And that's living with my parents, having a 10-year-old car where my car payment's $250 a month, still on my dad's insurance. So I don't have to pay for insurance. So that's a lot. So the burnout rate for mainly EMS or like emergency medicines, like in the ER also, is about 5 years. So when you're working double full-time hours, you burn out way faster than 5 years. So that was kind of my thing, is I burned myself out so fast. And they preach that there are resources, but it's kind of frowned upon to use them. Not kind of more by like peers. Like if I were to call my boss and say, hey, I need to take a mental health day, I'm not doing okay, I would get crap talked by my coworkers and by my boss. And I feel like that's a common theme mainly in EMS. In fire and like police, I feel like it's a completely different story, but for EMS, for some reason, there's not a very good mental health understanding. So
yeah, I can definitely see that. I know when I was in the Marine Corps, a big thing, like, going for any kind of medical care, I had a weird knee injury that took 2.5 years to get addressed. It's just wild. But I remember when I was having to go for follow-ups, it was like, do you think I like going constantly? No, I'm constantly going. And I'm like, no, there's still an issue. There's still an issue. So I remember there's a lot of that, like resistance to getting help.
Yeah.
And even just physical injuries. Yeah. I can imagine the mental injuries, we're still battling a lot of that. I think we've made a lot of ground, but we have a whole lot more to make. And I know with law enforcement specifically, at least in our state, so I'm trained to teach suicide intervention for first responders, but I'm licensed specifically in Oklahoma. They're required to have, at this time, it's been being pushed for more, but 2 hours of mental health training per year.
Yeah.
But that's
not enough.
It's not. And it's not a requirement for other first responder fields, like what you're saying, EMS, for nursing. It's the stories I've heard over the years. I've got to talk to some really amazing people, which I'm hoping to bring on to the podcast and be like, hey, other people need to hear this story.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you're also stuck in the trauma that you respond to. Like you have to drive by that same house. You have to go by the same school, or you go to the same hospital.
Literally
in the same
yesterday, me and my mom were thrift shopping in Norman, and we were driving down 12th Avenue or Sooner, whatever road you want to call it. And I was like, oh, that was where I ran my first pediatric special needs arrest. And my mom was just like, I was like, oh, haha. And it's funny to me. It's actually not funny at all, but you just have to learn just to shove that down. And like that was one of the first calls that I struggled with a lot, because I have always had a huge heart connection with special needs. I love them. I think they're precious, adorable. I love them. I have such a soft spot for them. And then kids. Like any kind of kid. So kids suck. They suck really bad. And so to have all of that combined, it was horrible. So I like called my dad at 6:30 in the morning, and I'm just like, and he's like, what? And now every time I drive past that apartment complex, I think of that, and I just relive that. And it's come to a point where I can kind of process, and I'm like, hey, I did my part. It's fine. I'm fine. And I can move on, but I still think about it. And that's something that if I was like mentally strong and like capable to process these things, I could see how this would eventually turn bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can see that with people in every day. That's the difference in military veterans and first responder type roles versus EMS, fire, police, nurses, is that the veteran community, if it's deployment related, it was another country. You get to physically leave that environment, not that situation leaves your mind, but the physical location triggers are different when it comes to fire, EMS, and police. Is that you're like, again,
drive by it every day.
You're in that same ambulance or similar ambulance, right? That same kind of route. That's definitely a whole nother layer of stress. And now we're talking about, when you say you work 24-hour shifts. Oh, you don't make enough for this one.
Yeah.
So now you got to work 80 hours a week. So now you're go, like sleep deprived, mentally deprived, and just stuffing it all in to try and do some good in the world.
Yeah. And it makes you lose your empathy, compassion. There was a point I ended up kind of leaving EMS, mainly kind of used the baby as an excuse, but I had mentally wanted to leave for a while. So there was one point, the company that I've been at forever, I just have a love-hate relationship with them. I can't ever leave, but it's such a toxic environment there that I like hate it, but I love it, you know? But there was one time, way before babies and stuff, I had just TMI real quick. I had an abnormal pap smear, and I had to have a cervical exam, and they had to take a biopsy of my cervix. Well, they told me, hey, be on bed rest for like a day or two, you know, chill out, relax. I went to work because I can't afford to not work. And my boss kind of like manipulated me into working an overnight shift. And I was already like, hey, I have a doctor's note saying I can't be here, and I'm here because I didn't want to call in. So, like, what do you mean? And he kind of like manipulated me to stay. And it's that type of stuff that you just can't escape. And so then you're like, now I'm cramping and I just feel horrible and just, I'm not even supposed to be here. And then you're running, you know, your third person that called for, you know, something silly. And so you're just like, you just lose all of the empathy and compassion. You're like, you're no longer a person. You're just an annoyance at this point. And then it just trickles and it spirals, and then you're done.
Yeah. I couldn't even imagine, really. I just sit here and I think of like, wow, and people are still doing this, and it's
it's so, yeah, it really is. Whenever I walk in 7-Eleven and I see their sign on the front door that's like, now starting at $15 an hour, and I'm like,
yes. I'm literally thinking of many places I know that pay more than that, and I'm just like,
Chick-fil-A, Hobby Lobby, On Q. I'm like,
yeah.
anyways.
So now you're in an environment that has high stress, low sleep, not a lot of supports for you to actually try and reduce that stress. And yeah, you're just getting paid pennies.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I will say there have been a couple times that we have had mental health assistance. So we have a program to where it's either 3 or 6 free therapy sessions that you can use through work. But I think it's just per calendar year. So then they can, that therapist can give you resources to, you know, whatever. But 3 or 6 isn't going to fix all your issues.
Yeah.
And then there have been a couple of calls that we've had, like there was a double pediatric trauma within the last year that the couple of medics that responded to the call, they got sent home, and they were checked in on multiple times for, you know, weeks, months after, because it was just truly a horrible call. But that's one of the calls that actually one of the ER nurses in Norman, he used to be a paramedic. He responded to that call, and he ended up committing suicide a week later, or 2 weeks later, a month later, whatever it was. And that call was just the last straw for him. And he was like the nurse manager in the ER, so he knew all the signs, he had all the resources, he knew all the facts, and still chose to do it. And it's stuff like that it's so, you get made fun of for saying, hey, I'm not okay, and then you just shove it all down, and then eventually something happens and you're just can't do it anymore, and it sucks. Yeah, I don't know how to fix it, but there has to be a way to fix it, you know.
I think one great way to fix it is people being able to have the courage to speak up and having these conversations and being more vocal about it, because things that are left taboo are left in the silence, they're left in the dark, and they're just going to continue to grow. And if we can't bust the light in, I think that that's something, when it comes to suicides, people just get to the point that they're so overwhelmed with pain, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain. And in this case, it's emotional pain.
Yeah.
Right? We're dealing with so much that you can't see the light for day anymore, and you just can't do it. And a lot of companies have EAP programs, the employee assistance programs, where they offer different things, but usually counseling is one of them. But like 3 to 6, nothing. And there's another nonprofit. I'm not going to say their name, but they promote themselves as giving free therapy to military veterans, first responders, and their families. But anytime I have ever reached out, and it's a nationwide program, anytime I've ever reached out, I've ever called, I've left messages, I've never gotten calls back. Never.
And honestly, with them, they're probably so swamped with people that people just fall through the cracks, and they have your name on this paper that's in this stack of people to call, and then their cat knocks your paper off, and then they just lose track, and there's no, I could see how that, and one of the, I honestly don't know who started it, but there's this girl, I think she was a nurse in the ER for a while. She either started or now works for this company. It's called Inner Circle. They're on Facebook. They do a lot of like mental health, like group therapy sessions, and they have so many resources and stuff. And I don't think it's for only Oklahoma City people. I think they have resources like all around. So there's someone that I definitely recommend to anyone. We had one of my medic friends ran a really hard call, and they made some kind of callous Snapchat story of like just kind of like poking fun at it, and kind of reached out. I was like, hey, like, are you okay? I know you can joke about it, but that's a lot. And they were like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And I was like, okay, well, if not, Inner Circle, they're on Facebook. I think they have an Instagram. Go follow them if you need any help. Like, they're awesome. Go check them out, type thing. And but the resources are so slim, and they're so overwhelmed that they'll just fall through the cracks and don't get all the assistance they need.
Yeah, you bring up 2 good points, and you brought this up earlier too. Is humor, right? We often heal through humor. We cope through humor. Yes. I am definitely one that does that. Always.
The very first time I met you was at a Mexican restaurant, and you're like joking about, you're like, oh, that guy's cute. Like, maybe when my husband dies, like, I can go date him. And I was like, this girl's kind of crazy. But it was funny.
Yeah.
And then, you just use humor to cope with things, and then it becomes not serious, but it's actually serious.
Yeah. It's ways to make it through, because there's definitely, like I said, I've made some jokes that were clearly taken the wrong way. Like I said, save my back. I'm 110 pounds. My husband's 150. Like, lifting him in and out of my car for a while, I literally was on 4 different medications trying to wake up in the morning to physically move.
Yes.
So yes, but just, we do the best we can with what we have in the moment and moving on. But the other great point that you brought up is when it comes to resources, that we have a lot of resources that either aren't known about, or the resources that we do know about, they're tapped, and we're dealing with people. So at the end of the day, it's someone else and their life on the other side. I remember when I went to go get the disabled placard for Andrew, and I went to check in, and I was kind of confused, and I'm at this window. I don't see anybody. And I'm waiting, and it says like ring bell. And I said, I'm patient. Maybe the person just walked to the back for a second. Maybe they just... So I waited. And then a girl rolls up behind me, and the pressure's on. Like, I'm the first in line.
So now I need to ring the bell
waiting.
for her.
So yes, exactly. That's exactly where I went. Well, I go to ring the bell, but what I noticed was there was a clip on the bell, like a binder clip. Those people were like, ding, 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 ding. Yeah. Well, my mind, my like crazy innocent mind was, oh my gosh, the person who normally works this window is like out sick, right? And they put the binder clip on there yesterday because somebody was ringing it like crazy. Now there's someone in the back that's filling in for the person who's supposed to be up front here, and they're just waiting to hear the bell ring. Well, I didn't ring the bell, and now
the binder clip's on the bell.
So to ring this bell, the binder clip like shoots off, the bell goes flying. It's this whole chaos, and I'm like juggling the bell now, my hand trying to catch it. So it's like, I'm like, oh. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this lady is on the phone, and she whips you. 1 minute. Oh my God, like, where did you come from?
Wait, where were you 5 seconds ago?
Yeah. So I look at the girl.
Chaos.
I'm like, did you see her? And she goes, I didn't see her either. I was at a good angle. Like, and I was like, I don't know. So I give her my paperwork. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like,
Yeah.
no clue. So I go sit down and I'm laughing about it. And the girl checks in and she rolls up next to me and she says something about the woman. I said, well, hell, for all I know, she probably got a call and, her husband's got brain cancer. I'm like, I'm not the only one with a husband dying.
That's funny. Yeah.
And the girl was just like, ugh,
Yeah.
shocked. And I said, well, what? We don't actually know. We have no clue who she was on the phone with. We have no clue the battles that she's battling every day. But I think when it comes to first responder roles, we put them on a pedestal to a fault. Like, those are the people that we rely on to go to help for.
They are so strong. They have their life together.
Exactly. They help
heroes.
everyone.
Yeah.
Then who's helping them? And the moment they have to step off the pedestal and be like, hey,
I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just a guy. I need help. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's a huge societal shift. So recognizing we need more resources, we need more knowledge about the resources existing. Systems can always use improvement, but
because 988 is a good resource. However, if you say like, hey, I'm having these thoughts like of hurting myself or whatever, I would like they're going to call 911 for you. And then the police and the ambulance are going to show up because you said you are having these thoughts, and not, hey, I'm about to do this. I'm just thinking about this stuff and I would like some resources to talk to someone. They're going to send all their reinforcements because they're legally required to, and they have to cover their own butts. And then you're like, oh, well, I can't call them anymore because if I do, then they're going to send all these people and all this attention and just all this stuff. And then it just becomes, oh, well, there's no one else I can talk to, so I'm just going to shove this down. And then,
yeah, that's, I've seen that happen. So at the boathouse, it is a common place. And there was a girl that was picked up out of the water, and our coach did amazing work with the girl, talking to her and getting her to shore. But they called ahead, hey, this happened. This is what the girl said. And they had already had police looking for her. She had called someone prior, but here we are. This is peak time of night. There's tons of teams out there, tons of boats out there, and police cars are rolling in. The fire truck is there. The ambulance is there. And at one point, there was a police officer that came, and he had like his holster unclipped with his hand like ready to go. And I'm like, what?
What are you going to do?
You're responding to someone who is suicidal. Like, what is going on? And what happened is they blocked where we needed to put the boats up. Ooh. So now you're
just waiting.
Like 60 people out there standing, and this girl basically doing the walk of shame. She's got to walk up in front of all these people.
And that's so embarrassing and humiliating when you are already at like
clearly a breaking point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that's systems changing. Our supports and our structures changing to be able to help us get through whatever we're getting through. Well, you've gone through more than just having to respond to calls, more than the burnout of community calls, responding, but you also had your own medical crisis.
Yes.
We've talked a little bit about that, and I love a lot of education that you're putting out online. I think it's really important to talk about that, but also maybe what did the supports look like being in a first responder field and having to then also rely on your fellow first responders to basically save your life.
Yeah. So when I had my ectopic the first time, so I was leaving shift and like we were literally heading back to the station, and I had been kind of cramping. I knew I was pregnant. We had gone to the doctor because my best friend's an ER doctor, so that has its perks. So we went to go see her and got my HCG labs drawn, and then we had an ultrasound done. Weren't able to see anything on ultrasound. They're like, you're probably, 4 or 5 weeks, probably too early to see anything. Like, come back in 2 weeks, whatever. So 2 days after we see her, it's like noon. I'm starting to like cramp and just not feel good. And I'm like, that's kind of normal in pregnancy, like. And then we're leaving shift. I think I got off at 5, so it's probably like 4. and I'm driving on the interstate going 70 in an ambulance. My partner's in the front with me, and I'm like, oh God, something's happening. And I'm like, I have a really high pain tolerance. I'll just leave it at that. I'm driving and I'm like scream crying because I'm in so much pain, and I like turn on the emergency lights and I just pull over. I didn't even look to see if there are any vehicles. Like I'm just like and so I pull over on the side of the highway. My partner's my first time working with this guy. Never met him, never seen him before in my life. And I'm like, I have my head up against the steering wheel. I'm just like, and I'm just like screaming, and he's like, what do you need me to do? Like, what do you need? I'm just like, I don't know. Like, and I'm like, I think I need a vomit bag. And I was like, I think I'm also gonna literally poop my pants. Like, I was just like, something's happening. So finally, it passes enough to where I can get out. So I'm like, hey, I'm getting in the passenger seat. Just take me to the closest ER. So I walk in, and it's this ER that we've been to a couple times. And there's this tech, and he sees me. He's like, oh God. And so he's like, lay down. Like, what's going on? So I kind of tell him. They get me checked in. And then they kind of expedite things just because I'm in uniform. Like, they see me. My boss calls me, and he's like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, no, I don't know what's going on, but like, no, I'm not okay. And he's like, hey, I got your shift covered tomorrow. Like, don't worry about coming in. Just keep us updated, whatever. Because this was the service that I worked for like 9 months or so. So I hadn't been there super long, had never really called in. Like, I didn't really know anybody either. It was so bad. But then they called, or they did all the tests, told me I was having an ectopic. They were going to transfer me to another hospital, where they were going to do emergent surgery that night, whatever. So they send me to the other hospital. The staff is basically like, hey, so it actually hasn't ruptured. Because that's the dangerous part about an ectopic, is because it's outside of the uterus. If it ruptures, you're bleeding out internally, and that's when it gets bad, and all the things can happen. She was like, since it hasn't ruptured, we're going to give you this medicine, which is actually a chemotherapy drug called methotrexate. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yep, it's pretty familiar. So they give me that, and it's supposed to help the body reabsorb the cells of the fetus. So they give me that. They put me on bed rest for a week. So I have, this doctor's note. I'm telling my new employer, hey, I can't work for a week. I'm sorry. They're so sweet. They honestly were so amazing. And then literally day 6, I get up to go to Walmart to buy myself a strawberry cake because I wanted strawberry cake for breakfast and we didn't have any. And kind of the same thing. I'm driving and I'm just like, I don't feel right. Like, something feels off, but I feel okay. So I'm still going to go in Walmart, still going to get my strawberry cake. And I start like walking into Walmart. I'm like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go to my parents' house. At the time, we were living in Choctaw, which is like a 30-minute drive to my parents' house. I was like, I'm just going to get in the car and like start headed that way. So I start driving, and same thing. I'm like, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to poop myself. I'm going to throw up all over myself. So I pull in actually to an urgent care, which is now the urgent care that I work at, which is full circle. I know. And I walk in, or I'm actually crawling in at this point, and I'm like, I need an ambulance. And so me working on an ambulance, I recognized, hey, you need an ambulance, but I couldn't call because I am 911. What do you mean? I can't call 911. So I get on the ambulance, and, fire shows up, and then the ambulance shows up, and I'm giving them a report, and I'm like, hey, I know your job. This is what you need to know. Take me to the hospital. However, I also know that a ruptured ectopic is a life-threatening emergency. That's a life and science to the hospital. So they have the EMT in the back of me, which is a no-no. I need an IV. I need cardiac monitoring. I need medication. They put the EMT in the back of me, which is, they can't do any of those things. And I'm like, and then it's kind of like a running joke in EMS. Paramedics suck at driving because they don't drive very often. So every single bump, and I'm in so much pain. And I was like, I yelled at this poor lady. I was like, stop this truck. Pull over. Y'all are switching. You're giving me medicine. Whatever pain medicine you have, you're giving it to me right now. Like, we're not doing this. They're like, okay. So they load me in. And then they take me to the ER that I was admitted to. And then same thing. I saw my ER nurse from last time. She's like, oh God, like, you look horrible. And I was like, yeah. My blood pressure when they pulled in was like 80/50, which is really low, but it's like, it's fine-ish. And then I don't have many nice things to say about the doctor I had because he told me that my vital signs were getting lower because I was getting better, and then was about to send me home.
I think we've probably had that doctor before.
No comment.
Yeah.
But then I was like, no. I said a few colorful words to him, and I was like, you're taking me to surgery right now. Get this thing out of me. I don't care anymore. And then they took me to surgery. That's when my blood pressure tanked, and I had over a liter of blood in my pelvis, which is, I mean, a liter bag of fluids is like this big. So that's a lot of blood.
Yeah.
And so they ended up doing the surgery. Everything was fine after that, you know. Now, obviously, we're having no issues in that department, but it was really scary. But knowing what I know about medicine, having all the friends that I have in EMS, and like my best friend being an ER doctor, I called her and was like, hey, this is what's going on. She's like, oh no, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And so just having those resources, having those friends let me know, hey, this is not okay. But nobody else knows that. You don't work, if you don't work in healthcare, if you don't have these friends, you just are like, okay. Because if I didn't know all the things I know, and he was like, yeah, you're getting better, I'm going to send you home, I would have gone home and like died. And that's so scary.
It really is a lot about the supports you have and the education. And then I also recognize the burnout within the medical field. And I joke, in the 5 years caring for Andrew, I probably have made it up to 7 people issues when majority of them were system issues.
Yeah.
I have removed some doctors from his care many of times. And the more the years go on, the more I do that. But I also recognize we're in a very unique situation when my husband has 2 terminal illnesses and should have died many a times ago. People are like, why are you still seeking help?
You called me this or texted me and you're like, this doctor told me that there's not anything they can do for him. And it was like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean you can't help him? Like, you're a doctor. Like, I remember that vividly.
Yeah. And it's stuff like aspiration pneumonia. It's not like people saying, like, we can't cure his brain cancer.
Yeah, we know that. However, his pneumonia you can 100% help with.
Or, urology issues or different stuff like that, where I do love when the doctors are like, they say stuff. You're one of those. Well, he's had brain cancer since 2009, technically. Okay, just came back.
Yeah.
This is wild. So that is something I'm very grateful for, is like being a researcher. So just diving into the research further, but having the support systems and friends. And I think, man, like if more people could have that, if hospital systems had more supports, if we actually changed how our systems are structured, we could save more lives, reduce more burnout.
And a lot of that is truly, truly, truly burnout. Yeah. 100% of the reason that your nurse is a bad nurse or that your doctor is because they're burnt out.
Yeah.
Because they have 4 other patients, because 20 minutes ago they were doing CPR on a baby and now they're having this grown man who wants his 4th water and he's calling you every name in the book because you didn't get it to him fast enough. It's burnout is so real, and that is truly like the cause. There are bad people, but that is 100% the cause of why you have these bad experiences.
Oh yeah. I think that there's many a times where I've been able to take that step back and recognize it. There's a couple of times where I was probably a cracker or something.
It happens.
I recognize that. I remember the neuro-oncologist that we met with, and won't say where, but they were pretty prestigious cancer place. And when he told me that there was nothing that they could do, that I was wasting my time, that I shouldn't seek medical care anymore, I should just focus on spending time with family, I looked at him, and again, he wasn't even addressing my husband, because at this point, my husband is nonverbal.
And he's not a human anymore. He's just a cure, and there's no cure, so he's just dismissed. Yeah.
And I thought of it too, and I thought, wow, like, that's how burnout he is, because he sees this day in and day out, day in and day out. And I asked him, I said, if this was your wife, would you do what you're telling me to do with my husband? And he said, yes. And then I I felt for his wife. I felt for him. I felt for everyone after that. And I said,
hard.
okay, thank you for your time. I appreciate what you've done this far, but I have no interest in my time investing just for medical interest for you to follow my husband. Because that happens. There's some people who I had 5 or 6 doctors who wanted me to send them everything for Andrew for medical interest. I'm like, I need someone brave enough to actually try and help them. And I'm so grateful for the neuro-oncologist we have, because I feel like he does do that.
And he gets it. Yeah.
But I don't know how that man does it, because that's one of the least supported in the entire cancer center here. He's the only neuro-oncologist in our entire state. Like that man's got a lot of supports at home.
Yeah.
A lot of resources keeping him going to be able to do the things he does, because when you're running into people everywhere.
When you're just surrounded by death, it just loses its impact.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same thing. Same thing last night, because me and my mom were driving, and I was like, oh, we ran a bump sickle right there. And she's like, what's a bump sickle? And I was like, oh, it's a dead hobo. She's like, Alissa. And I was like, what? He died. Like, it happens. And I realized, like, kind of in that moment, like, wow, like, I have kind of become that person that, like, death doesn't really mean that was a person, you know? And it's like, it just becomes so desensitized to it that it loses the depth of, hey, this human being is no longer alive. And I feel like, especially if you're in cancer, you see death all the time, and it just loses the weight of, that was someone's mom, someone's grandma, someone. So,
goes back to how we cope and how we can get through the day too, because people in those positions, if after one person dies, if everybody quits associated with that death, right, then we're out of loss of a lot of great community supporters and resources.
100%.
Well, I'm hoping to try and be able to impact more change. Obviously, it's like, the quote that I think gets overused the most by our mouths and not by our actions is, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think every single day we are the change. It's how we treat people. It's holding the door open for someone. It's not saying the shitty, nasty thing on social media for what,
and that's, I struggle with that a lot, because, I'm in this world of just all these people with the same humor as me, that it just kind of, it's really hard to be that different person. I have this friend, her name's Emily. I love her, adore her. She's a firefighter and more. Love her. She is the sweetest human. She's always kind to everyone. She's always patient. I want to be like Emily. But she is rare, because everybody else is so just hard and stone cold and just, it's so hard to be that person that changes the narrative.
It is. It really is. There was a couple times in my Marine Corps career where I remember stepping out and speaking up, and at one point I just needed one person out of 20 people to come forward to say, yeah, our staff sergeant threatened to break her leg. Not one person wanted to, because they saw how I was getting treated, because I was speaking up and I was speaking out. And that's a lot. That's what it takes to change. But when you're already burnt out, when you're already struggling, when you're just trying to do the best you can,
you're just trying to keep your head above the water.
So I'm hoping that, one, with this podcast and just the other things I do and proactive suicide prevention, just trying to make those changes and help other people and support them, especially people who have supported us. I think it's really important for us to be vocal. So
and that's something I tried to do. If we were on a bad call, so the double pediatric call that was really hard in Norman. I was at the hospital and they brought one of the kids in, and so I saw the guys, and I'm nosy, so I looked at our app that we have to see like what call they ran, and I was like, oh, that's the kind of call that they ran. Because at first I was gonna be like, what's up, losers? But then it was like, oh no, like, and so it was kind of, I tried to help clean up their truck a little bit, because they had all kinds of medical supplies everywhere. okay, like, are you guys doing okay? And none of them really wanted to talk to me. They were just like, and it's kind of one of those things you can't really poke and pry and talk if they don't want to talk. But I sent a text to a couple of them, was like, hey, like, I'm here if you need anything. And one of them was like really responsive, like, hey, thank you so much. Like, I appreciate that. But the rest of them were just like, yeah, it's just, you can't help someone that doesn't want to be helped. But just knowing that someone is there can help. So,
yeah, it definitely makes a huge difference. And when we have generations of, suck it up, pull it by your bootstraps, like there's a time and a place for that.
100%.
But yeah, I'm a firm believer in the body keeps score, right?
It does.
It stores it, and that's why we have so much chronic injury and illness, and especially our first responder community.
Yep.
Like there's lots of research out there on it. So
I will say I in high school I had POTS and all kinds of like orthostatic whatevers. Ever since I left EMS, I feel fine. I sleep like a baby every single night. I'm not working 24-hour shifts and surrounded by all this negativity and stuff. And it's I believe that too. Like, the body truly screams at you what you won't want to tell yourself. Because when my mental health was at the worst, that was when like my face was all bloated and just yucky looking, and I felt horrible every single day. I'd woke up and like my head hurt or my back hurt or whatever hurt, and now that I'm not, like, other than being pregnant, I feel great.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting concept that our heroes, right? The people that we expect to be able to be on their best at all times. Those are the career fields that are working 12, 24, 36-hour shifts. But you get somebody who has to work more than 8 hours at a fast food restaurant.
There was a video that went viral of this kid at Starbucks. He was like, they're making me work 8 hours today. Like, I would kill 8 hours.
And maybe that's a good change. I'd be curious to see why. What is the benefit? Why is that? Is it a historic thing? Is it one of those, this is how we've always done it?
Yeah.
Right? Because that could increase people's sleep hygiene, their recovery time, both mentally and physically. And yeah, maybe that's a good place to start, is saying, hey, we need to change these shifts because it is not long lasting for either the work or the community or the human.
The service that I worked at for like 9 months or whatever, they are making steps in the right direction. They don't have all the answers, but they do have, they're slowly getting it. They work 12-hour shifts. They also had an in-house mental health coordinator. She eventually, like, I think she lives in a different state now. Like, it wasn't the right fit for her, or I don't know the whole story, but she was no longer there. But she gave everybody her phone number, her personal cell phone number, her email. She was like, if I'm in the building, you are welcome to talk to me. I don't care if I'm in the bathroom. Like, hey, I need to talk to you. Call me, text me anytime, wake me up. I don't care. I want to hear what you have to say. She was an angel. I'm still friends with her on Facebook. She posts resources all the time. I actually might give you her contact info because that would be awesome for you. But that's slowly moving in the right direction. Another thing with EMS is, just like you were saying earlier, it's been so accustomed to like, oh, I'm fine. Like, it's all these older men that are like, oh, I'm fine. Whatever. I don't need no help. I'm good. And so I feel like once that kind of generation retires, then that'll leave kind of my generation to where we're not necessarily the whole crying because we have an 8-hour shift, but we're more open with mental health and like, hey, this is a real thing. Like, this is what we need to do to work on. And so I'm hoping in the next generation that it'll improve, but that's only if we're all using our voice and like talking about it, really.
Yeah. I think that's what's huge is, respecting where we've come from, not trying to disregard, but understanding, respecting where we've come from, how much we've grown, and being willing to still push forward to make changes. is going to make change.
Yes.
Especially talking
100%.
about it.
And if more ambulance services start doing what that department did, and they hire a mental health person, or they have someone that maybe an idea is, so most or all ambulance services, they have a medical director. It's a doctor that all the people use their license essentially to practice medicine. They have standing orders that the doctor creates. It's like, hey, with this patient, you give them this medicine. This is the dosage. If they have this, you don't give this medicine. They make all these rules up. But maybe we have like a mental health person that has all these agencies of like, I'm your person that if you have any kind of mental health questions, thoughts, anything, reach out to me and I'll direct you in the right area. Maybe that's an idea that we could implement. Because for her, she was just for this one company. And so there's a lot to do, but there's so many more people that need help. So maybe that's an idea.
Yeah. Countywide, statewide, something, having some type of initiative saying, and I know there's a lot of groups do peer support groups. I trained the Oklahoma City Fire Department peer support group in suicide intervention. And I love training first responders. I love my people.
They're fun.
I love veterans, military, police, fire, EMS. Like, I love all of you. It's great.
Yeah.
The humor, sometimes you can deliver things a bit differently.
Yes.
And I remember in that group, there was a gentleman who shared a story, and I won't share details, but he tells the story, and I'm thinking, is he bullshitting me right now? Like, I can't tell, because I mean, they joke a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, like, maybe he's bullshitting, and everyone is like snickering and laughing, and I was like, okay, they're playing me, right? And it comes out that this was a true story that happened, and when the guy came to work and he had a breakdown, it's like the feather on the camel's back, like the final straw, all those different phrases, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it was. And it was this, from outsiders, like, you think of it and you're like, there's got to be more to the story. And then as you learn, like, he was being serious in that moment, but no one took him seriously. So then they're all laughing because at this point they know, oh yeah, no, we feel really bad because we thought he was messing with us, and then it turns out it was true. And it was just this big, big, big thing. And I thought of it and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's literally what happens, And it was great that this guy has now become super outspoken about his story, even as he's like, yeah, it's embarrassing. It's, because this was the thing that got me, right? Yeah. But now he's on the peer support team, and he's super outspoken. And I enjoyed that class so much, and they were phenomenal and just eager to learn and how can they do better. And I know that also goes into resources, back to like funding, our state level, our community level, that there's different funding and different setups in different states and different communities. So also trying to see what can we do to support all of those communities and not just the ones that we're physically living in this moment.
Yeah. And I think honestly, the people that I know in EMS, I don't think any would go to a peer support group just because they have that like tough guy mentality. But I think if they were, and if someone snickered like that and like laughed, they would quickly just stop talking.
Yep.
And that's something that happens a lot, is comparison. It's like, okay, my hardest call that I've ever had to deal with was this old couple. He was like a decorated Vietnam vet or something. She died in her sleep, and we had to go in the morning and pronounce her dead. Not a big deal. He honestly handled it kind of great, whatever. And then he was like, I guess I better call my kids, let them know. So it's like, okay, do you need to use my phone? Do you have me, whatever. And he's like, no, I'll call. So I'm like sitting next to him. Because for some reason, we usually, whenever we have a death, we pronounce and we leave. But this was like at a nursing home. And so we had to wait to find out what their protocols were, if we had to wait for the ME or like what we had to do. There was just some reason we were still there. And so I was sitting next to him as he's calling his kids, and he's talking to his son that lives in Florida, I don't know, some other state. He's like, hey, mom's dead. And he starts sobbing, breaking down, crying. So this is at like 6:30 in the morning. Our shift ends at 7. We work 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. So I'm about to get off. So I get home and I just sit on my kitchen floor and I'm just sobbing. And it's like, and so anytime, I remember I was telling someone that, like the next shift, I was like, oh my God, we had this rough call. He's like, well, what'd you run? And I told him, he was like, oh, that's nothing. And it was like, okay, but that was something to me.
Yeah.
And so this comparison of like, oh, well, that's nothing. Like, I ran this dead kid when I was, and it's like, okay, yes, that's horrible too, but this was hard for me.
Yeah.
And so the whole comparison and saying like, oh, well, you don't have the right to be upset about that because that wasn't as hard as X, Y, and Z,
Yeah. That's why I try and preach so much, validate, don't relate.
Yes.
Is that we spend so much time thinking we're going to connect to people by relating, or like in your story, in your situation, a lot of the times it's like, oh, like, cheer up, no big deal. Like there's worse out there. And it's like, that doesn't help. It's not validating the pain. The pain is still the pain. The feeling is still the feeling.
There is this meme, or not meme, there's this picture that I've seen on Facebook and social media. It's of like a little wiener dog and then like a German Shepherd, and they're wading through mud. And it was like, just because the mud isn't deep to you doesn't mean it's not mud. Because the wiener dog, the mud's up to their neck, but the German Shepherd, it's like on their ankles, So it's like, that is such a good example. Like, it's still mud.
Yeah.
Like, just because you're taller and more capable of handling it doesn't mean that it's not drowning this other person who's not as capable or whatever as you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to we forget to treat each other like humans and understand that there's a lot to the human body.
Yes.
And how it affects our core being. Yeah, I recently, it took way too long, especially the field I'm in, watched Inside Out. I watched Inside Out 1 and Inside Out 2.
I watched that not too long ago too.
Oh my gosh.
That destroyed me.
Yeah.
That destroyed me as a person. Oh my gosh. Part of it, pregnancy hormones, but I cried like a little baby. That was horrible. It was amazing.
Did you watch 1 and 2?
No, just 1, because my mom wouldn't let me watch 2. She's like, Alissa, you've already cried a lot. Like, let's. And I was like, gosh, you're probably right.
No,
but I might go watch it when I get home.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I feel like with 1 and 2, 1 just really sets the premise, and they did a lot of research for that movie, which is amazing. They did
such a good job with that.
Yes, the second one I think is more relatable, because she's going into her teenage years.
She's like grown. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's not so far away for a lot of us, but I think we can understand a lot more because more emotions get thrown in, and talking about how do we develop.
Yeah. Because anxiety gets introduced, right?
Yes. Yeah. So there's like the islands that are developing in the first one, and how do we develop our beliefs?
Yeah.
How do we develop how we feel and how we act about things, how we remember things, and it's just, I highly recommend it anyway. It's so good. Are you gonna cry?
Oh, 100%. I'm gonna cry anyways. Like,
like,
fine.
Bravo if you make it through those movies and don't cry. I cried in Monsters Inc. I'm like, I
cry in every movie almost. Like, yeah. But that was one thing because I've always been kind of like an angry person. I don't know, just really aggressive, abrasive. Like, I am my dad, Junior, but female and 20 years younger. Like, my dad, we're two peas in the pod. And so I've always, whenever I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, I'm angry, like, ha, ha, ha. And then Sam was like, no, you're sadness. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm not sadness. I'm not sad. I'm not this weak little crybaby. And then I was like, watching it. I was like, wait. Oh, you're right. That's awkward. But yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I related a lot to Joy, but when you see the second one.
Okay.
Ooh, yeah. Then
I'm literally going to go home and watch that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Sam doesn't know it yet, but.
Yeah. I love it.
Okay. Good.
I can't wait for you.
I'm just going to send you a selfie of me, like, sobbing.
I'll send you all the hearts.
Okay, good. So excited. Yeah.
Well, I actually, normally I like set a timer or a clock, and I feel like a lot of these times, I've joked a couple times, I'm like, I'm going to turn into like Joe Rogan, and all of them are going to be like 3 hours long, because I think there's just so many great conversations.
Some things can't be rushed and like condensed that need to be talked about.
Yeah, for sure.
You gotta do part 2.
Yeah. But my, the other podcast I'm on, that's what my co-host was telling me.
Yeah.
He was like, you just bring it up in 2.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you willingness to come over.
Of course, it's fun.
Yay! And be able to talk about a range of different topics. Yes. I definitely think that there's a lot more that we could be doing to help support our first responders. But just in general, basic humanity is just taking a step back and remembering that we're all humans, and how can we do one thing to better somebody else's day.
It's the little things. Hold the door for them. Say thank you. You know, if you see, okay, actually today I'm almost 8 months pregnant. It's very visible. I was in the drink aisle. I was getting a case of water, and there was like 3 grown men that were like standing in the same aisle. They're watching this 8-month pregnant lady load this 40-pack of water into my cart. Seeing that and be like, hey, let me get that for you. It's little things like that that actually made me really angry. But it's little things like that. And then, 5 seconds later, there's this like really short guy. He was trying to reach something on the top shelf. I was like, oh, let me get that for you. And it took 2 seconds of my life. And maybe that made his day. Maybe that was the difference of like, oh, like there's restoring my faith in humanity. It's like little things like that. And not even just first responders, like for everybody. For first responders, 100%. Like if you buy my food, there was one day this lady bought my food in line at the cafeteria. She's like, my son's a paramedic. Let me just buy your food. And I literally went and cried because I was having such a bad day and I was so broke, and it just helped me out. So it's like little things like that, just be nice, say thank you, make eye contact, just be genuine. And that's something I'm trying to be more conscious of and do more. So it's little things like that. That's what it starts.
We all want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be recognized for who we are. So,
and not even just as a job, just as a human.
100%.
Yeah.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you found this episode inspiring, please share it with someone you never know who needs more light in their life. May this serve as a reminder that there's always darkness in the world. Do not let it consume you. Always seek the light. Please take a moment to do the good old subscribe, rate, and review. Your support means so much to me, and it helps me spread more light and love. Until next time, be kind, be loving, be human, and don't ever let anyone steal your hope.